Assalamu alaikum. Hope everyone is doing well. Today we'll be going over verbal sentences, so let's get started. So previously we learned that there are two types of sentences in Arabic. You have nominal sentences, which are jumla ismiya, and you have verbal sentences, which are jumla fi'liya. So we covered nominal sentences this whole time, so now let's take a look at verbal sentences. So, firstly, verbs in English, right? A verb is an action such as he wrote, you sketched, I painted. Notice how it's always accompanied by a pronoun, right? Such as he, you, or I. The verb always needs an accompanying doer to perform the action, right? The doer can either be a pronoun or it can be a noun. For example, my friend wrote, or Asad sketched, or the painter painted, right? The doer is the one that's actually doing that action. But for example, the boy ate. This isn't a complete sentence, right? Here we only have two parts: the verb, which is ate, and the doer, which is the boy. But you want to know what did he eat, right? The detail is missing, which is needed to complete the sentence. So the boy ate cheese is a complete verbal sentence, right? When a verb has a doer and the detail, it can create a complete verbal sentence. So here the doer is the boy, the verb is ate, and the detail is cheese. So let's go over a few examples. She cut paper. The doer is she, the verb is cut as that's the action, and the detail is paper. And again, you baked pie. The doer is you, the verb is baked, and the detail is pie. But you should know that the detail isn't always required to form a sentence. So it might be optional, or the verb may not support a detail. So for example, you have they left, right? They is the doer here, and the verb is left, but there's no detail because it's not needed. And the same thing with she sang. So we have the doer, which is she, and the verb, which is sang, but there's no detail because it's just intransitive here. Okay, so now we have what makes up a verbal sentence. So a verbal sentence is composed of three parts. You have the fi'l, which is the verb, you have the fa'il, which is the doer, and you have the maf'ul, which is the detail. Right? And unlike English, the verb fi'l comes paired with the doer, the fa'il, pronoun built into the fi'l. So for example, we have fataha, which means he opened. The he pronoun is already built in to the verb by default. Same thing with sami'a, which is he heard, and same thing with karuma, which is he was honored. Or here is he was honored because karuma is a intransitive verb. But as you know, the built-in pronoun can be changed by conjugating the verb. For example, fataha can become fatahat, and it becomes she opened now. And sami'a can become sami'ta, and it becomes you heard. And karuma can become karumna, which becomes we were honored. By conjugating it, you can change the pronouns. Now, the outside doer. So, in all of our previous examples, we looked at an inside doer, right? The verb itself had the doer inside of it. Now, to create an outside doer, the following is required. The outside doer must have an ism in the state of rafa. It must come after the verb, and it should match the verb in gender. So if you have an ism that meets all these conditions, then this would now be your doer. So for example, we have Fataha Muhammadun, right? Muhammad opened. So Fataha is your fa'il, and Muhammadun is gonna be your fa'il because it meets all these requirements. So for example, it's an ism in the state of rafa. You can tell by the dhamma here. It comes after the verb, and it matches the verb in gender as both of them are masculine. So this goes from he opened to Muhammad opened. Same thing here. Samiyat Fatimatu. So we have the fi'l, which is Samiyat, and Fatimatu, which is the outside doer. It's an ism in a state of rafa, because you can tell by the dhamma right here. It comes right after the verb, and it matches the verb in gender as both of them are feminine. This becomes Fatima heard. Okay, next, you should know that the outside doer doesn't need to match the verb in number. So, therefore, whether the doer is singular, dual, or plural, the verb will always be singular and in third person, right? So, only the gender needs to match. So, for example, here we have Nasara Talmizani, right? The two students help. Nasara is third person, singular. This is our verb, right? But Talmizani is in dual form, but that doesn't matter. This is still going to be an outside doer because all it needs to do is meet our three requirements. It comes after the verb. The ism is in a state of rafa, and we know this because of the ani ending, and both need to match in gender, and both are masculine here. So this becomes the outside doer, and it becomes the two students helped. Next, we have kharajal muslimuna. Again, same thing here. All we gotta do is check whether this is in a state of rafa. We know it is because of the una ending, and we know it's coming right after the verb, and we know that they both match in gender because both of them are masculine. So this becomes the outside doer, and it becomes the Muslims left. Also, you should note that the outside doer isn't just restricted to one ism. It can be its own fragment, as long as the fragment fulfills the requirements that we went over. So, for example, here we have غفر ابن الإمام, the Imam's son forgave. غفر here is the fi'l, and ibn al-imami is going to be our fa'il, because ibn al-imami is in a state of rafa because of the dhamma right here, and we know that this is mudaf and this is mudaf ilayh. Ibn al-Imami comes after Ghafara, and both of them match in gender as both of them are masculine. So now, this whole thing, Ibn al-Imami is going to be your doer. Same thing here. Qara'at tilkal bintu. So, Qara'at is going to be your verb, right? And tilkal bintu, this is ismul ishara, musharan ilay. We know that this fragment is in a state of rafa because of the dhamma right here, and we know that it's coming right after the verb, and they both match in gender as qara'at is feminine and tilkal bintu is feminine. So this becomes that girl read. Okay, so now let's look at a few examples. So here we have an example with the inside doer, jama'a. So this is going to be our fa'il, and the fa'il is inside, which is the huwa, which is he, so it becomes he gathered. Next, we have the same thing, Shakirat. This is going to be our fa'il, and the fa'il is inside because we have the conjugation with the da and jazm ending, which makes it third person feminine, so it becomes she thanked. Next, we have an example with an outside doer, dakhala al-kitabu. Right, dakhala is going to be our fa'il, and kitabu is going to be our fa'il, and this is going to be our outside doer because it comes right after the fa'il, and it's in a state of rafa, and we can tell by the dhamma ending, and both of them match in gender as both of them are masculine. So this becomes the writer entered. Next, we have an example with an outside doer, but it's a fragment. So, waqa'at thamaratu shajarati, right? So, waqa'at is going to be our fa'il, and thamaratu shajarati is going to be our fa'il because thamaratu is going to be our mudaf, and ash-shajarati is going to be our mudaf ilay. This is going to be our fa'il because this is in a state of rafa. You can tell by the dhamma right here. It comes after the fi'il, and both match in gender as waqa'at is feminine and thamaratu shajarati is feminine as well. So this becomes the tree's fruit fell. Okay, so the detail, which is the maf'ul, depending on the verb, can either be mandatory, optional, or not possible because the verb doesn't take details. And the detail basically answers certain questions pertaining to who, what, when, where, why, or how. So, for example, you have he went. So, where did he go? To the marketplace. This will be your detail. Or you read. What did you read? Shakespeare. Shakespeare would be your detail. She stopped. Why did she stop? Because the bell rang. Again, because the bell rang would be your detail. You get the idea. So questions can always be asked to spot the detail in English. But in Arabic, the detail is actually easier to distinguish because it'll always be in the state of nasab as long as the fragment allows for it. So, for example, we have أكل الغراب الطعام, right? And here akala is going to be our fa'il, right? And al-ghurabu is going to be our fa'il because it's in a state of rafa. It comes after the fi'il and it matches in gender with the fi'il. Both of them are masculine. And al-ta'ama is going to be our maf'ul, as you can see, because it's in a state of nasab. So this becomes the crow ate food. Next we have katabat risalatan tawilatan, right? And we know katabat is going to be our verb, right? Which means wrote. And we know that the fa'il is inside because of the da jazm ending. So this becomes she. And we know that our maf'ul, which is the detail, is going to be risalatan tawilatan because it's in a state of nasab, and this is mawsuf sifa, so all these match in all four properties. So this becomes she wrote a long letter. So this whole thing is going to be our maf'ul now because it's one fragment. So let's go over a few examples. So here we have an example with the maf'ul as a single word, hamala kitaban. So hamala is going to be our fa'il, and the fa'il is inside, which is going to be huwa, which is he, and our maf'ul is kitaban, and we know this because it's in a state of nasab, so this becomes he carried a book. Next we have the detail as a fragment. So we have rafa'a ibnahu. So rafa'a is going to be our fa'il, and the fa'il is inside, which is huwa, again he, and ibnahu is mudaf mudaf ilayh because of the attached pronoun. And we know that this is our maf'ul because this is in a state of nasab. You can tell by the fatha right here. So this becomes he raised his son. Okay, so here's an example with a maf'ul as a prepositional fragment. So we have ذهب إلى السوق. So ذهب is going to be our fa'il, and the fa'il is inside, which is huwa, so it's going to be he. And إلى السوق is jar majrur. So this is our harfu jar, and this is going to be our majrur. This whole thing is going to be our maf'ul. So it's going to be he went to the marketplace. And this doesn't have a nasab state because huruf don't have states, as we learned before. Okay, so here we have an example with the fa'il and the maf'ul as a fragment. So we have fataha dhalikal mudarrisu babal madrasati, right? So fataha is going to be our fa'il, right? Which means opened. And then we have dhalikal mudarrisu. This is ismul ishara, musharan ilay. And we know this is going to be our fa'il because it comes after the fa'il. It's in a state of rafa because of the dhamma right here. And they both match in gender as this is masculine and this is masculine. And then next we have babal madrasati, right? Which is mudaf mudaf ilay. No al, no tanween here. And this is in a state of jar, and we know this is going to be our maf'ul because this is in a nasab state, and we can tell by the fatha right here. So this becomes that teacher opened the school's door. And here we have the summary. So to create a verbal sentence, jumla fa'liya, you need a fa'il, fa'il, and a maf'ul. Maf'ul isn't always needed, it's dependent on the fa'il. And we know that the fa'il can be inside the fa'il, or it can be an outside doer, and if it's an outside doer, it needs to meet the three requirements. It comes after a fi'il, must match the fi'il in gender, and it must be in a state of rafa, and the maf'ul is always going to be in a state of nasab. And so that's it for today, and I'll see you guys next time.